My hands were shaking as I stood frozen behind my own front door, listening to my son plan my last moments. "Don't worry, honey, it's a one-way ticket." John's voice drifted through the crack in the door, casual as if he were discussing the weather. "When he's out at sea, it'll be easy to make it look like an accident. Nobody will suspect an old man who simply fell overboard." At that moment, standing behind the door of my own house, I took a deep breath and thought, if that's how you want it, my dear son, have it your way. But you're going to regret it 3 times over. Before telling you what I did next, like this video, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you are listening to my story from. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to control my breathing. Through the gap I could see John pacing in my living room, the phone pressed to his ear. My son. The boy I'd raised alone after his mother passed. The man I'd worked 3 jobs to put through college. The heir to everything I owned. "The insurance alone is worth $2 million, John continued, his voice tinged with excitement. "Plus the house, the business, the investments. We'll finally be able to live the life we deserve, Mela." The life they deserve, the words echoed in my mind as I slowly backed away from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I made it to my car without making a sound, started the engine, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. 20 minutes later I found myself parked at the beach, staring at the waves crashing against the shore. The cruise ship ticket sat on my passenger seat, mocking me with its cheerful blue border. A gift, John had called it. "You work too hard, Dad. You deserve a break. A break, a permanent one." I picked up the ticket and examined it closely for the first time. 7 days at sea, departure in 3 days, luxury cruise through the Caribbean. John had insisted on handling all the details, booking everything himself. How thoughtful of him. My phone buzzed, a text from John. "Hey Dad, did you forget something? The ship leaves in 3 days. You excited?" I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Can't wait, son. Thank you for this." His response came quickly. "You deserve it, Dad. Love you." Love, the word felt like poison now. I sat there until the sun began to set, watching the orange light dance across the water. My mind raced through possibilities, scenarios, plans. John thought he was so clever. He thought I was just a foolish old man, too trusting to see what was right in front of me. He was wrong. By the time I drove home that evening, I had the beginnings of a plan. If John wanted to play games with my life, I'd show him what it meant to underestimate Albert Morrison. The next morning, I woke up with renewed purpose. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and began to dig into my son's life. Really dig. It was amazing what you could find when you knew where to look. John worked as a financial advisor at a prestigious firm downtown, or at least, that's what he told me. I'd never questioned it before. Why would I? He was my son. I trusted him. I started with his social media accounts. Public posts showed the perfect life. John and Mela at expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, designer clothes. They looked happy, successful, but as I scrolled deeper, I noticed something odd. The timeline didn't match up. John claimed to have made partner at his firm 6 months ago, but there was no announcement from the company. No celebration posts from colleagues. Nothing. I called an old friend, Marcus, who worked in finance. "Hey Marcus, I need a favor. Can you look up John Morrison at Westfield Financial?" There was a pause. "Albert, I don't know how to tell you this, but John doesn't work at Westfield Financial. He was let go almost a year ago." The coffee cup in my hand stopped halfway to my lips. "What?" "Yeah, man, there was some issue with client accounts, nothing criminal, but enough that they let him go quietly. I'm surprised you didn't know." After I hung up, I sat in silence. A year. John had been lying to me for a year. Every time I asked about work, every story about clients and deals, all lies. But if he wasn't working, where was the money coming from? Those restaurants weren't cheap, neither were the vacations. I spent the rest of the day following the money trail. Bank statements I had access to as co-signer on old accounts, credit card bills, everything painted the same picture. John and Mela were drowning in debt. They owed over $300,000, spread across multiple credit cards and personal loans. The interest alone must have been crushing, but there was more. I found transfers from John's account to someone named Viktor Kozlov, large transfers, 30,000 here, 40,000 there. The name rang a bell, so I searched online. Viktor Kozlov wasn't hard to find. He was a loan shark with connections to organized crime in the city. The kind of man you never wanted to owe money to. The kind of man who made people disappear when they couldn't pay. Suddenly, John's plan made terrible sense. He wasn't just greedy, he was desperate, cornered, and I was his way out. My phone rang, John again. "Hey Dad, just checking in. Have you started packing for the cruise?" I forced my voice to stay steady. "Just about to. Can't believe it's in 2 days." "Yeah, it's going to be great. You're going to love it." There was something in his voice, eagerness, guilt. I couldn't tell anymore. "John, can I ask you something?" "Sure, Dad. Anything." "Are you happy? I mean, really happy? With your life?" A long pause. "Of course I am. Why would you ask that?" "Just wondering, at my age, you start thinking about these things, about whether you've been a good father. Whether you've done right by your family." "Dad, you've been amazing. The best father anyone could ask for. Don't think like that." The lie came so easily to him, so smoothly. I wondered how many other lies I'd swallowed over the years. "I love you, son." "Love you too, Dad. See you tomorrow for dinner before the cruise?" "Wouldn't miss it." After I hung up, I opened my laptop and began making arrangements. If John wanted to play this game, I needed to be 3 steps ahead. I had 2 days to set everything in motion. 2 days to turn the tables on my would-be assailant. First, I called my lawyer, Richard Chen. We'd been friends for 30 years. "Richard, I need to make some changes to my will. Today, if possible." "Albert, is everything all right?" "Just some precautions." "Can you come by this afternoon?" By the end of the day, my affairs were in order. Richard had looked confused at some of my requests, but he'd done as I asked. The new will was signed and sealed. If something happened to me now, John would get a very unpleasant surprise. Next, I visited my bank and made some interesting transactions. Then I stopped by a private investigator's office. Sam Rodriguez had helped me before with background checks for employees at my business. He was discreet, thorough, and asked no unnecessary questions. "Sam, I need full surveillance on someone, starting tomorrow." "Who's the target?" I hesitated for just a moment. "My son." Sam's expression didn't change. "When do you want me to start?" "Tomorrow morning. I'll send you all the details." That evening, I packed for the cruise, clothes, toiletries, my medication. I placed the blood pressure pills prominently in my bag where they could easily be seen, evidence that I was a man who needed his medication, a man whose health was fragile. As I folded my shirts, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Your payment is late. Mr. Kozlov is not pleased. You have 1 week." The message wasn't for me, but I'd arranged to have John's calls and texts forwarded to a burner phone I'd purchased. It wasn't entirely legal, but I needed to know what I was dealing with. 1 week, that explained the timing of the cruise. John needed me gone before Kozlov lost patience. I texted back, pretending to be John, "The money is coming, just a few more days." The response was immediate. "No more excuses. 1 week or we start taking payment another way." I could imagine the fear John must be feeling. Good. Let him sweat. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard John's voice. Nobody will suspect an old man who simply fell overboard. I imagined him pushing me off the deck in the middle of the night. The cold water, the desperate struggle, the slow realization that no one was coming to save me, but that wasn't going to happen, because John didn't know that I knew. And that gave me the only advantage I needed. The dinner the night before the cruise was surreal. John and Mela arrived at my house at 7, bringing wine and flowers. Mela hugged me warmly, her perfume expensive and cloying. "Albert, you're going to have such an amazing time," she gushed. "I'm so jealous." She was a good actress. I'd give her that. Her smile never wavered. Her eyes were bright with enthusiasm. If I hadn't heard that phone call, I'd have believed every word. John looked nervous, though. He kept checking his phone, his leg bouncing under the table. The weight of his debt, the pressure from Kozlov, it was eating at him. "Everything okay, son?" I asked, cutting into my steak. "What?" "Oh, yeah, just work stuff. I thought things were going well at the firm." His eyes darted to Mela before returning to me. "They are, just busy, you know how it is." "I do." I took a sip of wine. "Must be stressful." managing all those clients. It can be, he said carefully. And profitable. I imagine you and Mela seem to be doing very well for yourselves. Mela's smile tightened just a fraction. We've been blessed. That's good, really good. I leaned back in my chair. I've been thinking about the future, about what happens to everything I've built when I'm gone. John's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Dad, don't talk like that. You're healthy as a horse. I'm 58, John, not old, but not young either, and anything can happen. Accidents, illness. I paused. Falls. The silence that followed was deafening. Mela took a long drink of her wine. John stared at his plate. I just want you to know, I continued, that I've taken care of everything, made sure my affairs are in order. You won't have to worry about any of that if something happens to me. Nothing's going to happen to you, John said, but his voice lacked conviction. Probably not, but it's good to be prepared, I smiled. So tell me about this cruise. What made you choose it? John seemed relieved at the change of subject. I did a lot of research. This cruise line has the best safety record, top-notch security, medical facilities on board. I wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of. How thoughtful, and the itinerary looks amazing, Mela added. You'll stop at 3 islands. There are shore excursions, shows every night, amazing food. It sounds perfect, I said, almost too good to be true. John's eyes met mine for a brief moment, and I saw something flicker there. Fear? Suspicion? I couldn't be sure. The rest of the dinner passed with forced cheerfulness. They helped me load my luggage into my car for the morning. They hugged me goodbye. They wished me a wonderful trip. Be safe, Dad, John said as I stood at my door. Oh, I will be very safe. After they left, I stood at my window and watched their car disappear down the street. Then I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Sam. They just left. Stay on them. His response came quickly. Already following, they're heading to a bar downtown. I smiled. Time to see what my son did when he thought he was safe. An hour later, Sam sent me a series of photos. John and Mela at a booth, drinks in front of them, heads close together, then a photo of a man joining them, large, intimidating, with a scar running down his left cheek. Sam's text, that's Viktor Kozlov. My blood ran cold. John was meeting with Kozlov the night before my cruise. This was worse than I thought. They weren't just planning to end me, they were actively coordinating with a criminal. More photos came through, Kozlov looking angry, John gesturing desperately, Mela with her head in her hands. Then a final photo that made my chest tight. Kozlov sliding a phone across the table to John, John picking it up and nodding. Sam's text. Looks like they made a deal. Kozlov gave him something. Couldn't see what. I knew what it was. Instructions. Final details. Maybe even the method. Something in my drink. Sabotage my balcony railing. The possibilities were endless on a ship at sea. I texted back. Good work. Keep watching them tonight. I need to know everywhere they go. Then I made one more call. Richard, it's Albert. Remember that envelope I gave you? If you don't hear from me within 8 days, open it and follow the instructions inside. Albert, you're scaring me. What's going on? Insurance. Richard, just insurance. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and finalized my plans. Everything had to be perfect. One wrong move and I'd end up at the bottom of the ocean, just like John intended. At 4 in the morning, Sam's final report came through. They went home at midnight. Kozlov left alone. He made 3 phone calls on the way to his car. Couldn't hear what was said. 3 phone calls, coordinating with accomplices? Arranging backup plans? I didn't know, but it didn't matter. I had my own plans now. I showered, dressed in comfortable clothes for travel, and loaded my car. The cruise ship departed at noon. I had 8 hours to make sure everything was in place. The port was crowded with excited travelers when I arrived at 10, families with children, elderly couples holding hands, young people ready to party. None of them knew that somewhere among them might be an assailant waiting for his target. I checked in, received my ship card, and made my way to my cabin on deck 7. It was nice, a balcony cabin with an ocean view. John had spared no expense for my final voyage. After unpacking, I did something John wouldn't expect. I went to the ship's security office. Can I help you? A young woman in a crisp white uniform looked up from her desk. I hope so. My name is Albert Morrison, cabin 7042. I wanted to report a concern about my safety. Her expression became immediately professional. What kind of concern, sir? I have reason to believe someone might try to harm me during this voyage. She picked up a pen. That's a serious allegation. Can you tell me more? I'd rehearsed this part carefully. I recently discovered some disturbing information about my financial situation. I believe someone close to me has been stealing from me, and I'm worried they might try to silence me before I can report it to the authorities. Do you know who this person is? I have my suspicions, but I need to be sure before I make any accusations. What I'd like is for your security team to keep an eye on me, especially at night, especially near the deck railings. She typed something into her computer. We take all security concerns seriously, Mr. Morrison. I'm going to flag your cabin for extra attention from our night patrols. I'm also going to assign you a contact officer. If you feel threatened at any time, you call this number immediately. She handed me a card. Thank you. I know it might sound paranoid. Not at all, sir. Better safe than sorry. Enjoy your cruise, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. As I left the security office, I felt the first genuine smile cross my face in days. John thought he was so clever, but he didn't know his old man had a few tricks left. The ship's horn blared at noon and we began to pull away from the port. I stood on my balcony, watching the city shrink in the distance. My phone buzzed with messages from John and Mela, wishing me a great trip. I responded with thumbs-up emojis and smiley faces. Let them think everything was going according to plan. That first afternoon, I explored the ship. I noted the security cameras, the crew positions, the emergency protocols posted on every deck. I memorized the locations of the lifeboats, the medical center, the crew-only areas. Knowledge was power, and I needed every advantage. Dinner was in the main dining room, a grand space with chandeliers and white tablecloths. I was seated at a table with 3 other passengers, a retired couple from Ohio and a young woman traveling alone. First cruise? The woman asked. Her name was Jennifer, and she worked in pharmaceutical sales. First and possibly last, I said. My son gave it to me as a gift. How sweet, the wife, Barbara, said. You must have a wonderful relationship. We used to, I said quietly. Something in my tone made them change the subject quickly. We talked about the ports we'd be visiting, the shows scheduled for each night, the various activities available on board, normal cruise conversation. But my mind was elsewhere, constantly scanning the room, looking for anything out of place. After dinner, I attended the welcome show in the theater. It was entertaining enough, but I spent most of the time watching the other passengers. Was anyone watching me? Following me? I couldn't tell. When I returned to my cabin at 10, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. My heart raced as I picked it up. Inside was a handwritten note. Enjoy your first night, Dad. Sleep well, John. I stared at the note for a long moment. John wasn't on the ship. He was back home. So how did this get here? Unless he'd arranged for someone else to deliver it, unless someone on this ship was working for him. I immediately called the security contact number. This is Albert Morrison, cabin 7042. I just found a note slipped under my door and I didn't see anyone deliver it. I'll send someone to review the hallway footage, the officer said. Stay in your cabin with the door locked. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I checked through the peephole before opening it. It was the woman from security, along with a male officer. Mr. Morrison, we reviewed the footage. The note was delivered by a crew member as part of our guest services program. Your son arranged for notes to be delivered to you each night of the cruise as a surprise. It's a service we offer. I felt foolish for a moment, but then realized this was exactly what John would do. Create a paper trail of his thoughtfulness, evidence of what a caring son he was. When I turned up missing, these notes would show how much he loved me. I see. Thank you for checking. Are you all right, sir? You seem very nervous. Just adjusting to being on a ship. I'll be fine. After they left, I read the note again. There was nothing threatening in the words themselves, but knowing John's true intentions made them sinister. I placed the note in an envelope and labeled it with a date. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. I tried to sleep but kept waking at every sound. The ship's engines humming, footsteps in the hallway, voices from nearby cabins. At 3 in the morning, I gave up and stood on my balcony, looking out at the dark ocean. The water was black and infinite. If someone fell overboard at night, they'd disappear in seconds. No one would even see them go. Search and rescue would be nearly impossible. It would be ruled an accident, just like John planned. But I wasn't going to let that happen. The second day at sea dawned bright and clear. I woke early, checked that my door was still locked, and prepared for the day. Another note had been slipped under my door while I slept. Day 2, Dad. Hope you're having fun. Love, John. The cheerfulness was nauseating. I attended breakfast in the main dining room again, sitting with Barbara and her husband, Tom. They were sweet people, celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. 40 years, I said. That's impressive. What's your secret? Communication. Barbara said immediately. And trust, you have to trust each other completely. Trust, I almost laughed. I'd trusted John completely, and look where that got me. After breakfast, I wandered the ship, keeping my eyes open. That's when I noticed him, a man in his 30s, athletic build, wearing sunglasses despite being indoors. He was at the pool area when I passed through, then I saw him again near the shopping area. And again outside the casino, following me? Or coincidence? I decided to test it. I went to deck 9, the highest passenger deck, and stood at the railing, looking at the ocean. Sure enough, within 5 minutes, the man appeared, standing about 50 feet away, also looking at the water. My heart pounded. This was John's man. It had to be. I pulled out my phone and pretended to take selfies, making sure to get the man in the background of several shots. Then I went to my cabin and sent the photos to Sam with a message. Need you to identify this man. He's following me on the ship. Sam's response came an hour later. That's Kyle Morrison, your nephew, John's cousin on his mother's side. Kyle, I barely knew him. He'd been at a few family gatherings over the years, but we'd never been close. I didn't even know John still kept in touch with him, but apparently they were close enough for John to bring him in on the plot. Now I understood how John planned to do it. Kyle was on the ship, probably in a cabin paid for by John. When the time came, Kyle would be the one to push me over. John would be safe at home with an alibi. And Kyle would disappear into the crowd of thousands of passengers. It was clever. I had to give them credit for that. But knowing about Kyle changed everything. I couldn't just watch my back for random threats. I had a specific target to monitor, and more importantly, I had leverage. I spent the afternoon in the internet cafe, using the ship's Wi-Fi to dig into Kyle's background. What I found was interesting. Kyle had a record, nothing major. Bar fights, intoxicated and disorderly, one altercation charge that was dropped, but he'd clearly been having trouble staying employed, 3 jobs in the last 2 years. A man like that would be easy to recruit for something like this. Offer him enough money, appeal to family loyalty, and he'd probably do anything. That night at dinner, I was quiet, barely participating in the conversation around me. I was too busy planning my next move. Jennifer, the pharmaceutical sales rep, noticed. You okay, Albert? You seem distracted, just thinking about my son, I said truthfully, the one who gave you this cruise. That's the one. You must be close. I looked at her for a long moment. We used to be, but people change. Sometimes you don't really know someone until they show you who they really are. That sounds sad. It is, but also liberating in a way. Once you know the truth, you can stop pretending. After dinner, I went to the evening show, but I didn't stay long. I wanted to catch Kyle off guard. I found him at the casino, playing blackjack. I walked up behind him and waited until he noticed me in his peripheral vision. He stiffened but didn't turn around. Kyle, I said quietly, we need to talk. He threw his cards down and stood up, starting to walk away. I followed. I know why you're here, I continued, keeping pace with him. John sent you. He stopped, turned to face me, up close. I could see the resemblance to his mother, John's aunt, the same sharp features, the same cold eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, old man. Yes, you do, and here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away from whatever John offered you. You're going to stay far away from me for the rest of this cruise. And in exchange, I won't report you to ship security. Kyle laughed, but it sounded forced. Report me for what? Taking a cruise. For conspiracy to commit a serious crime. I let the words hang in the air between us. His expression changed, fear flickering across his face before he controlled it. You're crazy, maybe, but I'm also right, aren't I? How much did John offer you? 50,000. 100. Whatever it is, it's not worth spending the rest of your life in prison. I'm not listening to this. He started to walk away again. I recorded John planning my end. I called after him. It was a lie, but Kyle didn't know that. Everything, every word, if anything happens to me on this ship, that recording goes straight to the police. They'll connect you to John and you'll both go down. Kyle stopped but didn't turn around. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched into fists. Walk away, Kyle. This is your chance. He stood there for a long moment, then slowly turned his head to look at me over his shoulder. You don't know what you're dealing with. This is bigger than you think. Then help me understand. But he just shook his head and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of passengers. I stood there, heart racing, wondering if I'd just made things better or worse. Confronting Kyle was a risk, but I needed him to know I wasn't a helpless victim. I needed him to doubt, to hesitate, because hesitation might be all that kept me alive. That night, I barely slept again. Every sound made me jump. I wedged a chair under the door handle, just in case. At one point, around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps stop outside my door. They stayed there for a long moment, and I held my breath, watching the shadow under the door. Then the footsteps moved on. The next morning, day 3 of the cruise, I found another note under my door. Almost halfway through, Dad. Are you relaxing yet? John. The irony was thick. Relaxing. While his hired associates stalked me around the ship, I needed to change my strategy. Confronting Kyle might have bought me some time, but it wouldn't stop John's plan permanently. I needed something bigger, something that would force John's hand before he could force mine. I went to the internet cafe again and sent an email to Richard, my lawyer. Richard, I need you to do something for me. Contact Detective Maria Santos at the City Police Department. Tell her I have information about Viktor Kozlov's operation. Tell her I'll provide details when I return from my cruise, but only if she guarantees protection. Don't mention my son. Not yet. I hit send and sat back. Maria Santos was known for taking down organized crime. If I could convince her to look into Kozlov, she'd eventually trace the connection to John. And John would know he was being investigated. The pressure might force him to make a mistake. But I needed more. I needed to protect myself on this ship right now. I went to the medical center and requested a meeting with the ship's doctor. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a British accent. What can I do for you, Mr. Morrison? I wanted to make sure you have my medical information on file. I have high blood pressure, and I need to take my medication regularly. If I miss even one dose, it could be dangerous. Of course, we have basic information from your boarding forms, but if you want to provide more details, I'm happy to document them. I do, and I want to request something unusual. I'd like a crew member to check on me twice a day, morning and evening, to make sure I've taken my medication. The doctor looked puzzled. Are you concerned you'll forget? I'm concerned something might happen to me that would prevent me from taking it. I'm traveling alone, and if I were to become incapacitated in my cabin, no one would know. That's quite prudent. I can arrange for daily wellness checks. Is there something specific you're worried about? I hesitated, then decided partial truth was better than none. I have reason to believe someone might want to hurt me during this voyage. I've already spoken to security, but I want to make sure there's a paper trail. Documentation that I was healthy and taking my medication properly. Just in case, the doctor's expression became serious. Mr. Morrison, if you're in danger. I'm being cautious, that's all. Please, just arrange the checks. I will, and Mr. Morrison, be careful. By the time I left the medical center, I'd created multiple layers of protection. Security was watching me. The doctor was monitoring my health. Every note from John was documented. If something happened to me now, there would be questions. Lots of questions, but would it be enough? That afternoon, we arrived at our first port. Thomas. Most passengers were excited to disembark and explore the island. I wasn't planning to leave the ship. Too many opportunities for an accident on unfamiliar ground. But then I had an idea. I signed up for a shore excursion, a guided tour of the island with 30 other passengers, safety in numbers, and I made sure to befriend the tour guide, a local woman named Patricia. First time into Thomas? She asked as we boarded the bus. First time. I'm here alone, so I'm glad to have a guide. Don't worry, I'll take good care of you. The tour was actually pleasant. We saw beautiful beaches, historic sites, and local markets. I almost forgot about John and Kyle for a few hours. Almost, but as we were getting back on the bus for the return to the ship, I saw Kyle. He was standing near the port entrance, watching. He hadn't joined the tour, but he'd followed me off the ship, making sure I got back on board. Making sure his opportunity wasn't wasted. Our eyes met across the crowd. He didn't look away this time. There was something different in his expression. Determination? Resignation? I couldn't read it. I got on the bus and didn't look back. That evening, back on the ship, I attended the captain's formal dinner. I wore my best suit and sat at a table with Barbara, Tom, Jennifer, and 2 other couples. The food was excellent, the company pleasant. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine this was just a normal cruise, that I was just a normal man enjoying his retirement. But then I saw Kyle again, sitting at a table across the dining room. He was watching me, and sitting next to him was someone new. A woman in her 40s, well-dressed, attractive. They were talking quietly, their heads close together. Was she part of John's plan too? How many people were involved in this? I excused myself from the table and went back to my cabin. As I walked through the corridors, I felt eyes on me. Paranoia? Or real danger? I couldn't tell anymore. When I got to my cabin, I found the door slightly ajar. My blood turned to ice. I always locked my door, always. Someone had been inside. I pushed the door open carefully, half expecting to find someone waiting for me. But the cabin was empty. Nothing seemed disturbed. My belongings were where I'd left them, my medication was still on the bathroom counter, but something was wrong. I could feel it. I searched methodically, under the bed, in the closet, through my luggage. Everything seemed normal until I checked my medication bottle. I opened it and counted the pills. I should have had 27 left. Now there were 32. Someone had added pills to my bottle. My hands shook as I stared at the extra pills. They looked identical to my blood pressure medication, but they couldn't be. Someone had broken into my cabin and tainted my medication. If I'd taken them without checking, I'd be gone by morning. I immediately called security. This time, I didn't hold back. I told them everything: the overheard phone call, John's plan, Kyle following me, the break-in, the pills. 2 security officers came to my cabin within minutes, along with the head of security, a stern man named Captain Williamson. Mr. Morrison, these are serious allegations, he said after I'd explained everything. I understand, but I'm not making this up. Look at the footage from outside my cabin. Someone came in while I was at dinner. They did, and sure enough, the footage showed a crew member entering my cabin with a key card, staying for 3 minutes, then leaving. Who is that? I demanded. Captain Williamson's jaw tightened. That's Marcus Reed, one of our cabin stewards. But sir, stewards enter cabins regularly for cleaning and turndown service, at 8 p.m. during dinner hours. Does he normally service this deck? Williamson checked his tablet. No, he works deck 4, he has no reason to be on deck 7. Because someone paid him, I said. Someone paid him to add those pills to my medication. Williamson looked at the pills, then at me. Sir, these look identical to your prescribed medication. How do you know they're not? Because I count my pills every day. I'm very careful about my health, and there are 5 extra pills in this bottle. We need to test these pills, Williamson said, and we need to talk to Marcus Reed. An hour later, I had my answers. The pills were indeed not my medication. They were a powerful sedative that, when combined with my actual blood pressure medication, would have caused a terminal heart attack. It would have looked completely natural, just an old man whose heart gave out during a cruise. Marcus Reed was in custody, but he wasn't talking. He'd lawyered up immediately, refusing to say who hired him or why he did it. But it didn't matter. I had proof now. Proof that someone was trying to end me. Proof that this wasn't paranoia. Captain Williamson sat across from me in his office, his expression grave. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to be frank with you. This ship is now a crime scene. We have an attempted elimination investigation on our hands. I need to know everything, so I told him, all of it, the phone call, John's debts, Victor Kozlov, Kyle Morrison, the insurance money, the whole sordid truth. When I finished, Williamson was silent for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. I'm contacting the FBI. This falls under maritime law, and it's beyond my jurisdiction. We're also making an emergency course change. We'll be at the nearest port with U.S. law enforcement in 12 hours. What about Kyle Morrison? And the woman he was with at dinner? We'll have them both detained and questioned. If they're involved, they won't be going anywhere. I should have felt relieved, vindicated, but all I felt was tired, bone-deep tired. My own son had tried to end me, had paid multiple people to make it happen. The betrayal cut deeper than any fear for my life. Mr. Morrison, Williamson said quietly, I'm sorry. No parent should have to go through this. No, I agreed, they shouldn't. They moved me to a secure cabin on a restricted deck, with a guard posted outside my door. I was safe now, but safety fell hollow. I lay on the unfamiliar bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about the boy John used to be, the way he'd hugged me when he graduated college. The pride in his eyes when he showed me his first apartment. Where had that person gone? Or had he ever really existed at all? My phone rang. John. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Dad. How's the cruise going? Are you having a good time? His voice was so casual, so normal, like he wasn't waiting for news of my passing. It's been interesting, I said carefully. Yeah. See anything cool at the port today? I saw a lot of things I didn't expect. That's great, Dad. Hey, I was thinking, when you get back, maybe we could go to dinner. I feel like we haven't spent enough quality time together lately, T. The audacity was stunning. Sure, John, dinner sounds great. Awesome. Well, I'll let you go. I know the ship's Wi-Fi is expensive. Love you, Dad. John, wait, yeah. I wanted to ask him why he'd chosen money over his own father, why he'd gone so far down this path that ending me seemed like a solution, but I couldn't. Not yet, not until the FBI had him in custody and he couldn't run. Nothing, just, take care of yourself, you too, Dad, you too. After he hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand, feeling the weight of everything that had been broken between us. There would be no fixing this, no going back. When the truth came out, John's life as he knew it would be over, and somehow, that didn't make me feel any better. The next morning, we docked at San Juan, Puerto Rico. The ship was immediately swarmed by FBI agents and local law enforcement. I watched from my cabin window as they took Kyle Morrison and the woman from dinner away in handcuffs. Marcus Reed was also escorted off the ship. 2 FBI agents came to my cabin. Agent Rodriguez was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s. Agent Chen was younger, serious, with a recorder already running. "Mr. Morrison, thank you for your cooperation. Can you walk us through everything that's happened?" I did. I showed them the notes from John, the photos of Kyle following me, the tainted pills. I gave them Sam Rodriguez's contact information for the surveillance he'd done. I told them about Victor Kozlov and John's debts. "We've been watching Kozlov for months," Rodriguez said. "If your son is mixed up with him, that gives us leverage to flip someone in the organization. Will you arrest John?" I asked. "We're working with the city police right now. He'll be picked up for questioning today. But Mr. Morrison, you need to understand, this is going to be a long process. Conspiracy to commit a crime is serious. But we need to build an airtight case, I understand, and you need to be prepared for what comes next. This will be public, your family's business, your son's life, all of it will be scrutinized. The media will be relentless." I know, and I did, but what choice did I have? Let John get away with trying to end me. Pretend it never happened, no. Some things couldn't be forgiven, even by a father. They kept me in San Juan for 2 days, taking my statement over and over, making sure every detail was documented. Sam Rodriguez flew in to provide his evidence. Richard Chen sent all the legal documents. Slowly, the FBI built their case. On the 3rd day, Agent Rodriguez came to my hotel room with news. "Marcus Reed is talking," she said. "Kyle Morrison paid him $10,000 to tamper with your medication. Kyle got the fake pills from a contact in the States. We're tracking that down now, and the woman Kyle was with, her name is Samantha Brooks. She's a private investigator Kyle hired to watch you, make sure you followed your routines, documented when you took your medication. They wanted to know the perfect time to strike." Gosh, I breathed. How many people were involved in this? "We're still counting, but it gets worse. We arrested your son yesterday. He immediately asked for a lawyer and hasn't said much, but we got a warrant for his phone and computer. Mr. Morrison, he's been planning this for 6 months. We found searches for untraceable substances, maritime law, insurance fraud. He researched how long people stay underwater, what causes heart attacks, how ship investigations work. This wasn't impulsive, this was premeditated. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 6 months, while he'd been having dinners with me, asking about my health, pretending to care, he'd been planning my end. There's something else," Rodriguez continued. "We brought in Victor Kozlov for questioning. He's not talking either, but one of his associates cut a deal. Your son owes Kozlov $340,000. The deadline was 2 days from now. If John didn't pay, Kozlov was going to end him, so John was going to ruin me to avoid getting into trouble himself. It appears so. The associate also told us that John had originally tried to borrow money from Kozlov to pay off his other debts, but Kozlov saw John was desperate and kept raising the interest rate. It became a trap. And John saw ending you as the only way out." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the San Juan harbor. The cruise ship was gone now, continuing its journey with new passengers who had no idea what had happened on board. Life just kept moving forward, even when your world fell apart. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we build the case. We have Kyle, Marcus, and Samantha all facing serious charges. They'll likely turn on John to reduce their sentences. We're also working on bringing charges against Kozlov, though that's complicated. As for John, he's facing conspiracy to commit a serious crime, solicitation of a serious crime, insurance fraud, and a few other charges. He's looking at 25 to life if convicted." 25 to life. My son would spend the rest of his life in prison. "And Mela?" I asked. "His wife, she claims she knew nothing about it. We're investigating, but so far we haven't found evidence connecting her to the plot. She might have known about the debts, but not about the dark plan. I wasn't sure I believed that. I'd heard Mela on that phone call with John. But maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe John had kept her in the dark to protect her, or maybe she was just better at covering her tracks. "Can I go home?" I asked. "Yes. But you'll need to stay available for more questioning. And Mr. Morrison, watch your back. Kozlov's people might see you as a loose end." That was a cheery thought. I'd survived my son's attempt to end me, only to have a mob boss potentially coming after me next. The FBI arranged for a flight back home. They also arranged for a protection detail. An agent would be staying in a hotel near my house for the foreseeable future. I was grateful, but also exhausted by all of it. When I finally walked through my front door, 5 days after I'd left for that cursed cruise, the house felt different, empty, haunted by the ghost of the relationship I'd lost. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, something I rarely did, and sat in my living room. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, friends who'd heard about John's arrest. Business associates asking if I was okay, reporters asking for comments. I ignored them all except one. A text from Richard Chen. "I'm so sorry, Albert, if you need anything, I'm here." I texted back, "Thanks, Richard. I'm okay, or I will be," but I wasn't sure I believed it. The next few weeks were a nightmare of legal proceedings and media attention. The story of the father whose son tried to end him for insurance money was too juicy for the press to ignore. Reporters camped outside my house. My photo was plastered across newspapers and news websites. Everyone wanted to know how I felt, what I would say to John, whether I could forgive him. I said nothing publicly, let my lawyer handle it, but privately, I struggled with those very questions. How did I feel? Betrayed, angry, heartbroken, relieved to be alive, guilty that I hadn't seen the signs earlier. What would I say to John? I didn't know. Part of me wanted to scream at him. Part of me wanted to ask why. Part of me wanted to just walk away and never see him again. Could I forgive him? I honestly didn't know if that was possible. The evidence against John mounted daily. Kyle Morrison, facing 40 years in prison, cut a deal and testified that John had approached him 3 months before the cruise. John had offered him $100,000, 50 up front, 50 after my passing, to make sure I had an accident on the ship. Kyle had recruited Marcus Reed and Samantha Brooks, creating a network of co-conspirators. The fake pills were traced back to a pharmacy tech John knew who'd been fired for stealing medication. For $5,000, she'd manufactured pills that looked identical to my blood pressure medication but contained a lethal mix of sedatives and other substances. The plan had been simple. Marcus would swap the pills. I would take them thinking they were my regular medication. I'd become drowsy, confused. Then Kyle would follow me onto the deck at night, wait for the sedatives to fully kick in, and push me over the railing. Between the sedatives and the ocean, I'd be gone within minutes. The autopsy would show the medication in my system, but that wouldn't be suspicious. They were my prescribed pills, after all, or so everyone would think. It was thorough. It was well planned. It almost worked. Almost. John's lawyer tried to argue that John had been under duress from Kozlov, that the serious threats against him made him not criminally responsible. But the prosecution had evidence that John had started planning my demise before he even got involved with Kozlov. The debts were the catalyst, but John had seen ruining me as a solution long before Kozlov entered the picture. As the trial date approached, I had to make a decision. Would I testify against my own son? Richard came to my house to discuss it. We sat in the same kitchen where I'd overheard John's phone call, where this nightmare had begun. "You don't have to testify," Richard said. "The prosecution has enough evidence without you. Kyle's testimony, the physical evidence, the digital trail. They can convict John without putting you on the stand, but it would help their case if I did testify." "Yes, you're the victim. Your testimony would be powerful. The jury needs to see you, to understand what John tried to take away." I stared at my coffee cup. If I testify, I have to look him in the eye. I have to sit across from him in a courtroom and tell the world what he tried to do to me. I know, and then I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Knowing I helped send my own son to prison. "Albert, he tried to end you. You're not sending him to prison. He did that himself." I knew Richard was right, but knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally were different things. I need to think about it. That night, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I went to John's old bedroom. I'd kept it mostly the same since he moved out years ago. His high school trophies still on the shelf, his college diploma framed on the wall, photos of us together, camping trips, baseball games, his graduation. I looked at the boy in those photos and tried to see the man who'd planned my end, but I couldn't reconcile them. They felt like two different people. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Dad," John's voice. Broken, desperate. "Please, I need to talk to you." I should have hung up. I should have called my lawyer immediately, but I didn't. "How did you get this number?" "You're not supposed to contact me, I know." "I used a friend's phone, Dad. Please, just listen to me. Why should I?" "Because I'm your son," his voice cracked. "Because despite everything, I'm still your son." I closed my eyes. "You tried to end me, John, I know. I know, and I can't. I can't even explain how sorry I am, how messed up everything got, how I lost my way. You didn't lose your way, you chose this path. You planned my demise for months. You hired people to poison me, to push me off a ship. You were going to watch me drown and then collect my insurance money. That's not losing your way, that's evil. I was desperate. Kozlov was going to end me and Mela. I didn't know what else to do. You could have come to me, I said, and my voice broke. You could have told me you were in trouble. I would have helped you. I would have done anything to save you. But you didn't give me that chance. You decided I was worth more gone than alive. Silence on the other end. Then quiet crying. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, John. Sorry doesn't undo what you did, I know. But Dad, please, I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt you. I loved you. I still love you. I got in so deep, and I panicked, and I made terrible choices, but in my heart, I never stopped being your son. I felt tears on my own cheeks now, maybe not, but I can't be your father anymore. Not after this, Dad. Goodbye, John. I hung up before he could say anything else. Then I sat on his old bed and cried. I cried for the son I'd lost. I cried for the man he'd become. I cried for the relationship that was broken beyond repair, and then I made my decision. The trial began on a gray October morning, 4 months after the cruise. The courthouse was packed with media, spectators, and legal teams. I sat in the waiting area, flanked by Agent Rodriguez and a victim advocate, preparing to testify. When they called me to the stand, I walked into the courtroom and saw John for the first time since before the cruise. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit hung on him. His eyes were hollow. When our eyes met, he mouthed something. It looked like I'm sorry. I looked away. The prosecutor, a fierce woman named Janet Miller, led me through my testimony. I described the phone call I'd overheard. The discovery of John's debts, finding Kyle on the ship, the tainted pills. Every detail of his betrayal. John's defense attorney tried to shake my testimony on cross-examination, suggesting I'd misheard the phone call, that I'd jumped to conclusions, that everything could be explained away as coincidence, but I held firm. I knew what I'd heard. I knew what John had planned. When I stepped down from the stand, I felt lighter somehow. Like I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for months. Kyle Morrison testified next, detailing his conversations with John, the money he'd been paid, the plan they'd put together. He showed text messages, bank transfers, everything. John's lawyer tried to discredit him, but the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus Reed and Samantha Brooks also testified, each confirming their role in the conspiracy. The pharmacy tech who'd made the fake pills broke down crying on the stand, saying John had told her the pills were for a prank and she hadn't known they'd be used to end someone. No one believed her, but her testimony still condemned John. The digital forensics expert showed John's internet search history. The dates lined up perfectly. 6 months of research into how to end someone and make it look like an accident, and then the prosecution's final witness. Viktor Kozlov. He'd cut a deal with the FBI in exchange for testimony against John and information about his criminal organization. He sat on the stand, massive and intimidating, and calmly explained how John had come to him desperately seeking money, how Kozlov had seen an opportunity to exploit him, and how John had eventually confessed his plan to end me. I told him it was a bad idea, Kozlov said in his thick accent. Too many things could go wrong. But he was insistent. He said it was his only option. Did you help him plan the crime? Janet Miller asked. No, I loan money, I collect debts. I don't help people end their fathers. He said it like there was a moral line even he wouldn't cross. When Kozlov stepped down, the prosecution rested. John's defense put up a few witnesses. Character witnesses who said John was a good person who'd made mistakes. A psychologist who testified about the stress of debt and how it could lead to poor decision-making. But none of it mattered. The evidence was too strong. The conspiracy was too clear. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for only 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. John was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He looked back at me one more time, his eyes pleading, but I had nothing left to give him. I didn't attend the sentencing hearing. I couldn't watch my son be sent to prison for 28 years. Instead, I stayed home and waited for Richard to call with the news. When he did, his voice was somber. 28 years. He'll be eligible for parole in 18. But given the nature of the crime, he'll likely serve the full sentence. 28 years. John was 33 now. He'd be 61 when he got out. An old man, just like he'd tried to make me a gone one. How did he react? I asked. He broke down. Asked the judge to let him make a statement. He apologized to you. said he'd spend the rest of his life trying to atone for what he'd done. Then he collapsed and had to be carried out of the courtroom. I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no relief. Just emptiness. Mayla was there, Richard continued. She filed for divorce this morning. She's claiming she had no knowledge of the sinister plot and wants to distance herself from the whole thing. Do you believe her? Honestly? I don't know. She's either a good actress or she really didn't know. Either way, she's not facing any charges. After we hung up, I sat in my living room and tried to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. I was 58 years old. I'd survived my son's attempt to end me. I'd testified against him in court. I'd watched him be convicted and sentenced. Now what? The answer came slowly over the following weeks and months. I sold my business. I couldn't run it anymore, not with all the publicity and the constant reminders of what John had done. I took the money and set up a foundation to help people drowning in debt get financial counseling and legal help. Maybe if something like that had existed, John would have had a different path. I sold my house too. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I bought a small place in a different part of the city and started over. I went to therapy, a lot of therapy. I had to work through the betrayal, the grief, the guilt. Had to learn how to trust people again. I had to figure out who I was now that the central relationship of my life had been destroyed. It was hard. Some days I wanted to give up, but I didn't. I kept going. Because that's what survivors do. 2 years after the trial, I received a letter from John. The prison had forwarded it, along with a note that I could refuse any future correspondence if I wanted. I stared at the envelope for a week before opening it. The letter was long, handwritten, and raw. John detailed his journey since being incarcerated. The therapy he was receiving, the 12-step program he'd joined for his gambling addiction. Apparently that's where the debts had started, the guilt that consumed him every day. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He said he didn't deserve it. But he wanted me to know that he understood what he'd done. That he was trying to become a better person, even if it was too late to repair what he'd broken. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "I know I destroyed our relationship. I know you can never look at me the same way again. But I want you to know that ending you was the worst thing I ever imagined doing, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. Not because I got caught, but because in planning your demise, I destroyed the best part of myself. The part that you raised to be good and kind and honest. I'm trying to find that part again. I don't know if I can. But I'm trying, for me, for the memory of who I used to be. And for you, even though you'll never see it, I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and tried to decide how I felt. Angry. Yes, still sad. Absolutely, ready to forgive. No. Maybe not ever, but maybe, just maybe, willing to acknowledge that people were complicated. That John was both the son who'd loved me and the man who tried to end me. That both could be true at once. I didn't write back, but I didn't throw the letter away either. 5 years after the cruise, I was in a different place. Literally and figuratively, I'd moved to a coastal town in Maine, far from the city and all its memories. I'd met someone, a widow named Sarah who owned a bookstore. We took things slow, but she made me laugh, and that felt like a miracle after everything. I still thought about John. How could I not? But the sharp pain had dulled to a constant ache, manageable. Livable. I'd received a few more letters from him over the years. Each one showed growth, maturity, genuine remorse. I never responded, but I read them all. Then one day, I got a call from the prison. John had been wounded in a fight. He was in critical condition. I should have felt something, fear, concern, but I just felt tired. Is he going to make it? I asked. The doctors aren't sure. He's in surgery now. We're calling because you're still listed as his emergency contact. Do you want to be notified of any changes in his condition? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yes, I finally said, keep me informed. John survived the surgery. The weapon had missed his vital organs by centimeters. He'd been protecting another inmate, apparently. Taking a hit meant for someone weaker. Maybe he really had changed, or maybe it was just one decent act in a life filled with mistakes. I didn't visit him in the prison hospital, but I did send a card. It said simply, "I'm glad you're alive." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was an acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that despite everything, some part of me still cared whether my son lived or passed, and maybe that was enough. 10 years after the cruise, I was 68 years old. Sarah and I had gotten married. I'd published a book about my experience. Not for money, but because a therapist suggested it might help others who'd been betrayed by people they loved. It resonated with more people than I expected. John had served 10 years of his sentence. He'd become a model prisoner, helping other inmates with financial literacy and debt counseling. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. He'd sent me a letter on the anniversary of his sentencing every year. Each one was different, but all carried the same message. He was sorry, he was trying to be better, and he hoped someday I might be able to think of him without pain. This year's letter came with a request. His parole hearing was coming up in 8 years. He wasn't asking me to testify on his behalf. He wasn't asking me to support his parole. He just wanted me to know that if he got out, he wouldn't try to contact me unless I wanted him to. He would respect my boundaries, whatever they were. I showed the letter to Sarah. She'd heard the whole story, of course, had held me through the nightmares that still came occasionally, had helped me rebuild my life. What do you think? I asked her. I think, she said carefully, that you get to decide what forgiveness looks like for you. Maybe it's letting him back into your life someday. Maybe it's never speaking to him again. Maybe it's something in between. But it's your choice, and no one else's. She was right. Of course, I thought about it for a long time. And then I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I wrote back. The letter was short. John, I received your letter. I want you to know that I've followed your progress over the years. I know about the programs you've started, the men you've helped, the person you've tried to become. I can't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did broke something in me that can't be fully repaired, but I can acknowledge your efforts to change. I can hope that you continue on this path, not for me, but for yourself and for the people whose lives you touch. If you're granted parole in 8 years, I won't oppose it, but I also won't testify on your behalf. You earned this sentence, and you need to serve your time. After you're released, if you want to contact me, you may, once. One letter, and I'll decide then if I'm ready for any kind of relationship, even a distant one. That's all I can offer right now. Albert. I mailed the letter and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation, but maybe the beginning of something like peace. 18 years after the cruise, John was released on parole. He was 51 years old, gray-haired, worn by prison, but somehow more solid than the desperate man I'd watched be convicted. I watched the news coverage of his release from my living room in Maine. The reporters asked if he planned to contact his father. He said simply, "That's up to him. I'll respect whatever he decides." True to his word, he sent one letter. It arrived 3 weeks after his release. Inside was a single page. Dad. I'm out. I'm living in a halfway house, working at a non-profit that helps people with debt management. I'm trying to rebuild a life worth living. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I think about you every day. I'm grateful you survived. I'm grateful you found happiness with Sarah. I'm grateful you gave me the chance to become someone better, even if it's someone you'll never know. If you ever want to meet, I'll be here. If you don't, I understand. Either way, thank you for giving me life twice. Once when I was born, and again when you survived what I tried to do to you. I love you, Dad. I always have, even when I'd lost my way so completely that I couldn't see it. John. At the bottom of the page was his phone number and address. I put the letter on my kitchen table and stared at it for days. Sarah didn't push. She just waited for me to figure out what I wanted. Finally, on a Tuesday morning, I picked up my phone and dialed the number. He answered on the second ring. Hello? John. It's me. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. Dad? Yeah, it's me. I didn't think you'd call. I wasn't sure I would either. I paused, trying to find the right words. I'm not ready to see you. I don't know if I'll ever be ready for that, but I'm willing to talk. On the phone, sometimes, if you want. I want that, God, Dad, I want that more than anything. This doesn't fix anything, I said firmly. This doesn't erase what you did. It just means I'm willing to see if there's anything left to salvage. I understand. That's more than I deserve. We talked for 20 minutes. Awkward. Painful, but also somehow necessary. He told me about his work at the nonprofit. I told him about my book. We didn't talk about the past. Not yet. Maybe not ever. When we hung up, I felt exhausted but also strangely lighter. Sarah hugged me. How do you feel? I don't know, I admitted, but I think maybe I did the right thing. Then that's enough for now. 20 years after the cruise, I'm 78 years old. Sarah and I are still together. Still happy. My health is good. Despite the blood pressure, I still monitor carefully. John and I talk on the phone once a month. We've never met in person. I'm not sure we ever will, but we've built something, not a father-son relationship. Not exactly, but a connection, an acknowledgement of shared history and the complicated truth that people can be both terrible and redeemable. He's running the non-profit now. It's helped thousands of people avoid the spiral of debt that destroyed his life. He's never married again, never had children. He says he doesn't deserve that kind of happiness. I don't argue with him. Sometimes, in our conversations, I can hear echoes of the boy he used to be. The one who was kind and hopeful before the world beat him down and he made catastrophic choices. I don't forgive him. I don't think I ever fully will. But I've made peace with what happened. I've built a good life despite, or maybe because of surviving his attempt to end it. The cruise ticket is still in a drawer somewhere. I've never thrown it away. It's a reminder of how close I came to passing and how far I've come since then. People ask me sometimes if I regret testifying against John. If I wish I'd protected my son instead of helping to convict him, the answer is always no. John needed to face consequences for what he did. He needed to understand that actions have repercussions, that you can't hurt people, especially people who love you, and walk away unscathed, but more than that, I needed justice. I needed to know that my life had value, that attempting to end me wasn't something that could be swept under the rug or explained away. The trial gave me that. The conviction gave me that, and in a strange way, it gave John something too, a chance to hit bottom and rebuild himself into someone better. Would I take back what happened if I could? Would I choose to never overhear that phone call, to never know my son wanted me gone? I don't know. Because without that terrible knowledge, I wouldn't have fought back, I wouldn't have survived, I wouldn't have found Sarah or written my book or helped other people navigate betrayal and trauma. Everything terrible that happened led me to where I am now, and where I am now is, against all odds, a good place. Last week, on the 20th anniversary of the cruise, I did something I never thought I'd do. I booked another cruise. Sarah was surprised. Are you sure? I think I need to, I said. I need to reclaim that experience. To prove to myself that a cruise is just a cruise, not a tragic end, not a nightmare. Just a vacation. So here we are, on a ship, sailing through the Caribbean. We've stopped at St. Thomas. The irony isn't lost on me, but this time, I'm not alone. I'm not afraid. I'm not looking over my shoulder for someone who wants me gone. This time, I'm just a 78-year-old man enjoying a vacation with the woman he loves. On our third night at sea, I stand on the deck and look out at the ocean, the same ocean where I almost passed 20 years ago, the same dark water that was supposed to be my grave. Sarah comes to stand beside me, slipping her hand into mine. You okay? She asks. Yeah, I say, and I mean it, I'm good. The ship cuts through the waves, moving forward, always forward, just like life. You can't go back, you can't undo the past. You can only keep moving, keep surviving, keep finding reasons to wake up every morning. My son tried to end me, that will always be true, but I survived. I rebuilt it, I found happiness again, and that's my revenge. Not punishing John, not holding on to anger forever, but living. Living well, living fully, living in a way that proves his betrayal didn't break me. As the sun sets over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I squeeze Sarah's hand and smile. I'm 78 years old. My son is in his 50s, still trying to atone for the worst thing he ever did, and I'm here, on a cruise ship, watching the sunset. I won. Not because John went to prison, not because justice was served, but because I'm still here. Still alive, still capable of joy and love and peace. That's the best revenge of all. Let me know in the comments where you have watched it from and what you would have done if you were in my place. Also, tell us if you liked my story because it inspires us to share more such stories with you.